At least change your clothes before anyone sees you. Victoria pulled me aside in the hallway of the funeral home, her voice low but sharp. You look like you don't even have a home. I can't stand next to you like this, especially not today. This is our grandmother's funeral. She stepped back and looked at me again, clearly unhappy. Her black designer dress was perfectly pressed, her jewelry matched beautifully, and not a single strand of her hair was out of place. She looked exactly like someone who belonged in a magazine. Then she leaned closer and added quietly, "This is why Mom says you'll never succeed. You can't even look decent for one day." I didn't reply. Instead, I looked down at what I was wearing. My old coat, my loose trousers, and my worn-out boots. I had owned them for years. They weren't just clothes to me, they were part of my journey. But Victoria never cared to understand that. Without saying anything, I walked to the back of the chapel and sat where no one would notice me. I didn't want to embarrass my family any further. But something strange happened. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I knew something she didn't. Months later, at one of the most exclusive Fashion Week parties of the year, everything changed. The room was filled with important people, designers, editors, celebrities. Victoria stood confidently among them, holding a glass of champagne, waiting for her moment to shine. Then it happened. Her glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. She had just watched something she couldn't believe. The editor-in-chief of Vogue had walked right past her, completely ignoring her, and came straight toward me. "Elena," she said warmly, wrapping me in a hug. "Your fall collection has completely changed how we see sustainable fashion. We want you on the September cover." Her words spread through the room like a wave. Victoria stood frozen, her hand still stretched out from when she had tried to greet the editor. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, her voice shaking. "Did you say, the September cover?" The editor turned slightly, looking confused. "I'm sorry, have we met?" Victoria swallowed. "I'm Victoria Morrison, Elena's sister." "Oh," the editor replied calmly. "Elena has never mentioned a sister." The silence that followed felt louder than any noise in the room. What Victoria never understood was that my homeless look was never an accident. It was a choice. For 15 years, I had been building a different kind of fashion, one that didn't depend on trends or fast consumption. While she chased luxury brands and changing styles, I focused on creating something lasting. I worked with vintage fabrics. I rebuilt old materials. I designed clothes meant to last decades, not just a season. The coat I wore to the funeral? It was my first serious design. I made it during my time in graduate school using old military fabric. I had worn it for 8 years straight. It had become my signature piece. It had even appeared in magazines Victoria read all the time. But she had never noticed. Because she only saw what she expected to see. To her, I was still the same failure she had decided I was years ago. My journey into fashion hadn't been planned. I had once followed the path my parents chose for me, a business degree. But I left it behind and joined a small art school to study textile design. My family was furious. "You're ruining your future," my mother said. "That's not a real career," my father added. Victoria laughed. "Give her 6 months. She'll come back." 6 months turned into 15 years. My first opportunity came from Japan. A small boutique in Tokyo discovered my work at a student exhibition and ordered 12 pieces. That small order opened doors to many more. Within 3 years, my designs were being sold across Asia and Europe. But I never told my family. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because their opinions no longer mattered to me. The only person who ever truly believed in me was my grandmother. 3 years before she passed away, she showed up at my studio in Brooklyn all by herself at the age of 84. She hadn't told anyone. She just arrived with a suitcase and a smile. "Show me everything," she said. I showed her my work, my fabrics, my designs. I explained my ideas, how I wanted to create fashion that didn't harm the environment, that lasted for years. She gently touched my coat and smiled. "This is what you were meant to do," she said. "I've known since you were a child." "Mom thinks I'm wasting my life," I told her. "Your mother believes success looks like your sister's life," she replied softly. "But she's wrong." Before she left, she held my hand tightly. "Keep going," she said. "And stop hiding. When I'm gone, don't let anyone make you feel small." At her funeral, Victoria's words hurt, not because I believed them, but because she chose that moment to say them. I stayed quiet. I stood in the back. I left early. But no one noticed something important. At the edge of the cemetery, A small group of women stood together. They had come for my grandmother. They were from some of the most powerful fashion publications in the world. My grandmother had written to them after visiting my studio. She had told them how proud she was of me. One of them said before leaving, "Your grandmother was amazing. She made us promise to feature your next collection." 6 weeks later, I launched my fall collection. I named it Eleanor, after her. It included 32 pieces inspired by her wardrobe from the 1950s, rebuilt using sustainable materials, designed to last another lifetime. The response was overwhelming. Magazines covered it. Luxury stores placed orders. Celebrities showed interest. And finally, I received an invitation from Vogue. That night at the Fashion Week party, Victoria finally saw the truth. Not the version of me she had created in her mind, but who I had actually become. The meeting about the September cover had to be done in person. So I went, wearing the same coat Victoria had once mocked at the funeral. I paired it with trousers from my own collection and the same boots I had worn for years. I looked exactly like myself. Victoria, on the other hand, had spent weeks trying to get into that party. She didn't work in fashion. She worked in pharmaceutical marketing, but she had convinced herself that Fashion Week could be her way into a more glamorous life. She had worked hard for it. She made calls, asked for favors, and even bought an expensive dress she couldn't really afford. Finally, she managed to get an invitation to an event where she didn't know a single person. Her plan was simple. She would introduce herself to editors, talk about branding ideas, and present herself as someone with fresh perspectives. She had prepared everything: what to say, how to say it, even who to approach. But there was one thing she hadn't prepared for: seeing me. Seeing the sister she thought had failed, being hugged by one of the most powerful women in fashion. When her champagne glass shattered on the floor, people turned to look. Victoria stood there, surrounded by broken glass, her confidence falling apart just as quickly. "You're a designer?" she finally asked, her voice unsteady. "Since when?" "Since 15 years ago," I replied calmly. "When I left business school and started studying textiles." She stared at me. "But, you never told anyone. Mom and Dad don't even know." I stopped talking about my career to people who had already decided it was worthless, I said. "You told me I'd fail in 6 months. Why would I share my success with someone waiting for me to lose?" Her expression changed again and again. Shock, confusion, embarrassment, maybe even regret. "The September cover," she whispered. "That's the biggest issue of the year." "I know. I don't understand," she said. "How did all of this happen without anyone knowing?" "It didn't happen without anyone knowing," I answered quietly. "The people who mattered knew. You just never paid attention." Margaret had been watching the whole conversation silently. Finally, she stepped forward. "Elena, shall we find somewhere quieter to discuss the shoot?" "Of course," I said. Then I looked at Victoria one last time. "Enjoy the party," I told her gently. "The food is actually very good." And then I walked away. The meeting with Margaret was calm and focused. We talked about everything: the photo shoot, the schedule, the creative direction, the story they wanted to tell. "Your work isn't just fashion," she explained. "It's a statement. Sustainability, longevity, and your grandmother's influence. That's what people need to understand." "You want to include my grandmother in the article?" I asked. "If you're comfortable," she said. "The letter she wrote to us was incredible. She believed in you deeply." I felt my throat tighten. "She was the only one who did," I said softly. Margaret smiled. "Then we'll make sure the whole world understands now." Across the room, I could still see Victoria. She had cleaned up the broken glass with help from a server. She tried to continue talking to people, but something had changed. Others had seen what happened. They saw the editor ignore her. They saw me being welcomed. They understood that whatever story Victoria had been telling about herself wasn't real. She left early. I stayed until everything was finalized. 3 days later, my mother called. Victoria had told them everything. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked. "All these years, you never said you were successful. Would you have believed me?" I replied. There was silence. "Of course we would have," she said finally. "You told me fashion wasn't a real career," I reminded her. "Dad said I was ruining my future. Victoria said I would fail. We were just worried about you." "No," I said calmly. "You dismissed me." "That's different." That conversation opened wounds we had ignored for years. My mother admitted she had been afraid I would struggle. My father had been disappointed I didn't follow his advice. And Victoria, she's been crying for days, my mother said. She should, I answered. She called me homeless at our grandmother's funeral. She didn't know. She didn't ask, I replied. She decided who I was and treated me that way. Can you forgive her? I can accept that what she did was wrong, I said. But forgiveness needs accountability. And she's never taken responsibility before. 6 weeks later, the photo shoot happened. The feature was 12 pages long. My designs were shown on models who truly understood the meaning behind them. The article explained everything: my work, my philosophy, and the story of the Elena collection. They even printed my grandmother's letter. My granddaughter has created something extraordinary, it said, even if her family failed to see it. Reading those words, in the very magazine Victoria had always admired, gave me a kind of peace I didn't expect. After the issue was released, Victoria asked to meet me. We chose a small cafe near my studio. She arrived holding the magazine. I read it 3 times, she said. The article and grandmother's letter. She hesitated. I've been a terrible sister, she admitted quietly. I studied her face. What made you realize that? The magazine, or the way you treated me before you knew I was successful? She looked down. Both, she said. But mostly the party. Watching someone ignore me, and choose you instead. It made me realize how wrong I was. She paused. I was so sure you had failed, that I never even looked for proof that you hadn't. You never asked about my life, I said. Not once. I know, she whispered. I was afraid. Afraid that you might be happy, without following the same path I did. We talked for 2 hours. For the first time, she explained herself honestly. Her fears. Her insecurities. Her belief that my choices somehow judged her own. I did everything the right way, she said. Business school. A stable job. A safe life. I followed all the rules. Her voice broke. And then you just left, and built something beautiful. You could have built something too, I said. Not now, she replied. I have responsibilities. A family. A career I can't just walk away from. Then build something within that life, I told her. But stop resenting me for building mine. We didn't fix everything that day. Some things don't heal that quickly. Victoria had spent years looking down on me. And I had spent years protecting myself from her judgment. Trust doesn't come back overnight. But for the first time, we were at least trying. But something had changed. Not suddenly, not completely, but enough to notice. Victoria started asking questions. Real questions. Not the kind people ask just to be polite, but the kind that come from genuine curiosity. She wanted to know about my work, how I design my pieces, what inspired me, and what I planned to do next. For the first time in years, she was actually trying to understand me. She began reading articles about my collections. When new features came out, she didn't skip past my name anymore. She even started telling her daughter about me. Your aunt is a designer, she would say, with a quiet kind of pride. And one thing I noticed most, she never again made a comment about my clothes. The following year, in September, my second Vogue cover was released. This time, the feature included something deeply personal. A photograph I had kept private for years. It was a picture of my grandmother in my studio. She was standing beside me, her hand gently resting on the coat she loved so much, the same coat I had worn to her funeral. Her face was full of pride, her eyes shining in a way I would never forget. After the issue came out, Victoria called me. She visited your studio, she asked softly. I didn't know. No one did, I replied. She wanted that moment to be just between us. There was a pause. She saw everything you built. Victoria asked. Yes. Another silence, longer this time. I'm glad, she said finally. I'm glad someone in the family understood. It was, perhaps, the kindest thing she had ever said to me. I still kept that outfit. The coat. The trousers. The boots. The same ones Victoria once called homeless. I never stopped wearing them. They became part of who I was. I wore them to interviews, to events, even on red carpets. They appeared in photographs, in magazines, in moments that defined my public life. They became my signature, because to me, they were never just clothes. They were a story. My grandmother understood that. She understood that some clothes are more than fashion. They carry meaning, memory, an identity. Mine told the story of a woman who built something quietly, without applause, while her own family wasn't paying attention. A woman who stayed true to herself. A woman who honored the one person who believed in her, through fabric, through design, through every piece she created. I still remember that day at the funeral. Victoria telling me I looked like an embarrassment, telling me to stand at the back so no one would see me, looking at me as if I had nothing. And then, months later, at the most important fashion event of the year, watching as the editor-in-chief of Vogue walked past her and came straight to me. "Your collection has changed everything," she said. "We want you on the September cover." And in that moment, everything shifted. For 15 years, I had been building something real, something meaningful, while my family believed I had failed. My grandmother had been the only one who saw the truth. She came to my studio. She wrote letters. She believed in me when no one else did. Her words were printed in that first Vogue feature. My granddaughter has created something extraordinary, even when her family failed to notice. And eventually, Victoria did notice. Maybe too late to change the past, but not too late to change herself. As for me, I still wear that coat, the one she once laughed at, because it tells my story, and I will never hide that again.